Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on peer-to-peer fundraising. I am Kelsey Woodworth. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at GiveSmart, and today I'm really excited that we have Brandon, who is our Director of Marketing, and Alyssa as well. And so, yeah, thanks for being with us today, guys.
Thanks for having us. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be joining you all today.
Yeah, cool. So, like I said, Brandon is with GiveSmart, our Director of Marketing. He's also a former candidate for the Man of the Year for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And also, we're delighted to be partnering with the GiveGab team. So, and that is where Alyssa is joining us today, and she is the Director of Account Management. So, just really quick, a couple of housekeeping bits before we get started. So, everyone who registered today, we'll be sending a link to this recording when we're finished. So, no worries, we'll get that out to you guys when we wrap up. And then you can access any of the resources that we cite today in the handout section. We should go about 30 minutes, we anticipate, and then we've asked Brandon and Alyssa to stay on for another 15 minutes for Q&A. So we do have the chat open. Feel free to submit any questions or comments there throughout. And finally, if you are inclined, we'll be live tweeting, so you can follow along with our tweets at #GiveSmartPowerUp. So before we jump in today, I just want to take a quick poll and just see how many of you have already run a peer-to-peer campaign. So please weigh in, and while we wait for everyone's responses, Brandon, I know you're involved with GiveSmart, but also leukemia lymphoma. Could you tell us a bit about your peer-to-peer experience with them?
Absolutely. So Leukemia Lymphoma Society run a national campaign. Pretty much every regional or local chapter runs it. It's called Man and Woman of the Year, and it's a campaign very focused on bringing the community together, tapping into the networks of people who are already involved in the organization or want to get involved in the organization. And it's a competition, which as a person who worked in the sports industry at the time, I loved competition. So that was what really kind of hooked me. But I was really excited to get involved in that, and it was an experience that was very unique. So we'll talk more about that campaign, how they run that, but that's the essence of it.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's see the results here. And so it looks like we're pretty split today about the amount of you who have run campaigns and have not. So cool. That's going to be good to know as we go through. And so today, as we go through, the main 3 points is we're going to just go through, okay, what exactly is peer-to-peer fundraising, some best practices, and tips for success when it comes to running your campaign. And so there's peer-to-peer, and then there's crowdfunding. And Alyssa, can you kind of take us through what the difference is here? They both work with crowds of people, but
yeah, definitely. So crowdfunding is really about generating, a crowd of people around a fundraising effort, while peer-to-peer, on the other hand, is about getting your supporters to fundraise on your behalf through their own social networks. Peer-to-peer can be used to fundraise for a crowdfunding effort, but they're not one and the same. And today, when we do refer to people in your peer-to-peer campaign, we'll be referring to them as fundraising champions. So when I say fundraising champion, think of that as your peer-to-peer fundraiser. It's the individual fundraising for you. So here's a great visual to understand the difference. On crowdfunding, everyone is tossing all their coins into one big bucket, while on peer-to-peer, 20 people are going around with smaller buckets to collect those coins. All the funds end up in the same place, but they are collected differently by different people. Got it.
Yeah, this visual is, I think, definitely helpful. So I guess, Brandon, your experience with leukemia lymphoma, like why would an organization choose to do a peer-to-peer campaign over something else?
So the difference with a peer-to-peer campaign is it's a combination of fundraising, but also growing your awareness for your organization through personal connections that you may not have yourself, but extending it throughout other networks of your supporters and people who will support those individuals. So that's enabling your access to new people, but also the peer-to-peer campaign will allow you to spread your story and tell your story, and also tap into potentially some new people that you've not engaged with before and didn't have access to.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and GiveGab has done a ton of research around peer-to-peer fundraising and how it contributes to a campaign's success. To put some numbers around this, we found that on average, one fundraising champion for your campaign can bring you 4 new donors per campaign. So every one fundraising champion could result in 4 new donors for your campaign or your organization. And if you add a peer-to-peer component to another campaign, you can raise up to 3 times more than if you didn't have that peer-to-peer component added on.
Okay, wow, yeah, that's a pretty extensive reach, I'd say. And through personal connections, which is always like a really great way, obviously, to connect with people. So as your organizations, I guess, are beginning to put these campaigns together, we just want to run through a few best practices to keep in mind. And I guess these best practices are kind of all about being visible and unique. Yeah, right, Brendan?
Totally. I mean, being visible, but more importantly, being donatable. So when we say donatable, think about it as making sure you have an online presence and an easy way for people to give you money, right? But more importantly, providing contact information and a clear way for people to donate online. Some would call it a fundraising packet or information for any of your peer-to-peer or fundraising champions that are out there, so they can fundraise online or collect checks in the old school way, which I know we did a lot with the LLS campaign. You have those older relatives who just want to mail you a check as part of the campaign. You need to have that easy for the fundraising champion to be able to really raise more. And then more importantly, be mobile, where donors are more than anywhere else. Make sure that you're using a platform or outreach that is mobile optimized and you're reaching donors on their smartphones or on their devices where they're most often being seen. And then finally, social media. We all know it's not surprising when we even have, I think this is a Facebook image here, being on social media and making sure that you are telling the story and enabling your fundraising champions to tell that story so that it is easier to get that, continuous giving, maybe even enrolling people into a monthly giving campaign or something like that.
Yeah.
And beyond just being found and being donatable in the venues where your donors are, which is definitely the most important thing. You can't accept donations unless, you're donatable. Having a unique campaign is kind of the next thing that you need to focus on. You want to customize your campaign to be a very specific cause or initiative. And when you do that, it helps your campaign stand out from the other asks throughout the year. This is probably not your only fundraising campaign in the year, but you want to make sure that it stands out from your other campaigns. And you also want to make sure it stands out from other fundraising campaigns in your community. You also need to make sure you're telling your donors why should they donate to this campaign specifically. Again, if a campaign blends into one another in a donor's mind, it just seems like you're constantly asking for money without any direction or focus for your organization, which can be really difficult to continue that stewardship process with your donors. And even more importantly, when you think about a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, a specific cause or initiative is easier for your fundraising champions to really rally around and fundraise for. It's easier for them to explain why they're asking their networks when there is a well thought out unique purpose behind the campaign. If you think about your donors who are already giving on a monthly basis, why should they give to a peer-to-peer campaign again? They're already giving you that monthly gift. You want to make sure that you have, again, that unique purpose behind your campaign, that they want to participate in this additional peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. And you can even differentiate, if you're thinking about having a campaign surrounding event, think about how you can really broaden that. Everyone does a walk, run, ride event, and they're great. People understand them. They know what they're for. They know how to participate in them. Yeah. But I would really encourage you to think outside the box a bit and to think about what your community may not have already for that live event component you might have with your peer-to-peer fundraising campaign.
Just to add to that a little bit, we're seeing a lot, like in Chicago now, with people are doing climbs instead of runs because we have these tall buildings with lots of stairs. That ties back to their mission, which is kind of a cool thing that's new. People thinking outside the prototypical box of fundraisers.
That's really
and we'll definitely, and we'll get kind of more on like the specific events in a bit. But so Alyssa, when you guys at GiveGab are advising clients on getting their campaigns up and running, kind of like what exactly are you saying to them, and how are you advising them there?
Yeah, we recommend that every peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, and really every fundraiser, you provide a toolkit to your fundraising champions. Your fundraising champions probably have never fundraised before. They don't really know where to start. So by giving them a toolkit to work with, they'll really understand what they should be doing. We recommend that your toolkit has a variety of different tools, and I'm going to walk through each one of these briefly. First is you really want to make sure that your fundraising champions are able to share their story. Encourage them to share a story about their connection to the organization, and if they can, to share some photos. You know, a picture speaks 1,000 words, and that's really true in fundraising, peer-to-peer fundraising. You also want to, of course, talk about a summary or provide a story from your organization itself as to why this peer-to-peer fundraising campaign is going on. You know, why is this initiative important to your organization, and what is that impact? And again, that goes back to that customized story that you want to have written so your peer-to-peer your fundraising champions can rally around them. This toolkit should also allow the ability to give donations from the peer-to-peer fundraising champion prior to the campaign starts. This allows you to kick off the fundraising campaign with money kind of already in the bank. You can already show progress towards that goal, so people are more likely to give at that point. The most important thing that I think you can provide your fundraising champions, though, is a communications guide. Again, your fundraising champions probably have not fundraised before. They don't really know how to ask people to give money. So providing a communications guide with suggested personalized email templates and even phone scripts can really help them connect with their community. Of course, you want to make sure that they're able to share their personal fundraising champion pages out on social media, and you can even provide some suggested copy to them so they, again, know how to bring donors in through their networks. We also recommend that your toolkit, of course, has a thank you email template so that the peer-to-peer fundraisers, the fundraising champions, can easily start that donor stewardship process. And of course, you want to make sure that those fundraising champions can track progress towards their fundraising goals. They want to know how much money they're raising and how many donors that they are bringing in.
Yeah, great. Those are all really great points and things to remember, because I think the more, that you can enable people, that your fundraising champions, provide them with things, the more likely they are to participate, right? Because we're making it easier for them. And I wanted to share this example of a peer-to-peer page, because it's a really good example of a champion fundraiser, she's come in, she shared her story, added this personalized text here. Yeah.
I just like the dogs.
Yeah, the dogs are really cute too.
Yeah, little Hattie and Pickles, they're great. But yeah, you can see this page. It has that personal photo from Lynn, and it has her name, it has her goal, and even has a little story about why she's fundraising. It's a great example of a fundraising champion page.
Yeah. Cool. So all important things to include. And so moving on to the next focus point is going to be setting up for success. So best practices are, of course, a great place to start when it comes for setting up for success. But some other campaign factors kind of that come in that should be considered if peer-to-peer is going to be successful for your organization as well. So Brendan, your campaign with leukemia lymphoma, and what did that look like?
So the campaign for Leukemia Lymphoma Society all builds up to an event, a gala-style event. So it's about a 6 to 8 week campaign. I think they do differ in different markets, and they've even messed around with the timing a little bit. It's not necessarily the amount of time as much with the campaign length, as much as watching for exhaustion or fatigue among your fundraising champions. If you find that they're lagging in donations recently, or someone is expressing that they're tired of asking the same thing over and over again, you do need to be ready to pivot to something else, have something ready to reinvigorate those people, or be ready to say, good, the competition wraps up in a day, so it's perfect timing. So you'll learn that over time. Something like a kickoff party to really get them ramped up does make that time seem more tenable to a fundraiser, and they're able to really focus on that 6 to 8 week period, or whatever the period of time it is. 6 to 8 weeks is not a specific recommendation. That's just what one organization is doing. If it's tied to a live event, it does make it easier to kind of manage the fatigue, but it doesn't have to be. That's the nice thing about having a digital platform, and something that can be utilized to reach out through social media and all these different avenues, but include different ways to space out a campaign in your communication plan and in your toolkits, and that'll help with this challenge that everyone's going to have of when are people tired of hearing the same thing?
Yeah, it's like it's and also like anything, if there's a certain length, if you've done it in the past and it worked, kind of go off of what's worked for you in the past and what hasn't. So we're going to pause again just for another quick poll here to kind of see. So those of you who are planning a peer-to-peer campaign or have, are you planning to run a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign in conjunction with a live event? So yes, no, not sure. And while you all weigh in, Alyssa, I know kind of offline you had shared a story with me about animals actually being the champion fundraisers themselves. So if you could kind of expand on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Fun little story.
Yeah. So I worked with an animal rescue down in Florida, and they really wanted to think outside the box with their fundraising champions. And so instead of having people fundraise for the organization, they actually had their board members sign up and pretend to be the rescue animals that were up for adoption at the rescue. So the board members signed up. They were able to write some really great stories about these shelter animals. They were able to get some great photos of them, share them out on social media. And it was really great because they were really able to highlight the individual animals. And not only did they get to raise, it was financially successful, they were able to really shine the spotlight on some of those animals that were long-term residents at the shelter. And they were able to actually, help them find their forever homes as well. So you can think really outside the box with with fundraising champions and peer-to-peer fundraising.
Yeah, definitely. And it's nice that these types of campaigns like offer a lot of space for creativity. So, okay, so it looks like here kind of the majority of people either are or maybe not sure about running their peer-to-peer in conjunction with a live event. Alyssa, are you surprised by this?
I'm not actually that surprised. I do find that peer-to-peer campaigns do run really well alongside a live event. I'm curious to see what types of live events those that chose no are hosting. So I'm curious to see what type of peer-to-peer fundraising they could do in conjunction with those types of live events.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so continuing to talk, let's talk more about events. Over to you, Brendan.
Yeah, just to touch on some of the different things that you can be running in tandem or as a wrap up to the event. You have your typical 5Ks, walk runs. You have galas or a dinner or a sit down event. You have the climbs, like I mentioned earlier, where it's a unique way to incorporate your community, something that is different, where people aren't doing the same thing. Those that still want to do the exercise type thing can be a part of it. And then, Alyssa, I know you have seen some skydiving lately as an event.
Yeah.
Up and some things on that extent of kind of like a bucket list item where people all want to check something off their bucket list, but also help a cause, right?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Alyssa, like how many people, so I guess if you could think of a skydiving campaign, like how many people participated in that? Is it like 6 or 100? Or like, I'm just curious how people are jumping out of the sky that day to benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, so with that one in particular, the fundraising goal for those fundraising champions was on the higher side. It was close to $1,000, if not more. And it was probably 10 to 15 people, though. I mean, it was a good amount of people that actually hit that goal, with even more that signed up and tried to reach that goal.
That's awesome. The key, obviously, to all of it is having something, a unique experience or something that brings everyone together in the end to celebrate, right? You want everyone to end in some spot where they celebrate how much was raised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so now that we've talked about how long to run a campaign or different types of campaigns, and we've been mentioning these champion fundraisers, but Alyssa, like kind of question for you is like exactly who are these fundraising, these champion fundraisers, and how does an organization decide, who to ask?
Yeah, so my blanket statement is ask everyone, but that's not super detailed for those trying to learn about this. But your fundraising champions are really the strongest supporters closest to you and your organization. Think about your volunteers, your board members, yourself, and your coworkers. They already know a lot about that or your organization. They know the impact that your organization has on your community. They understand the initiatives you're trying to put through. So because they already know that, they're able to really tell the story of your organization to their networks. So once you kind of narrow that down, you can also look at some other some of your supporters that are a bit more social. Maybe they're popular on social media. Maybe you're looking at your top donors. They've already given kind of their annual amount every year, but they can still contribute by becoming a fundraising champion. You can even think about people who are involved in your upcoming event. A gala honoree, someone that you're honoring at a gala, is a great person because, again, they understand your mission at your organization.
One of the things that sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
go
off
ahead,
there,
Brandon.
but,
No worries.
one of the things we saw with LLS and how I got involved was they actually tapped into kind of their social media in the extent of looking at who was on their board, who was on their committee, and identifying people that they thought would be a good fit based on who was connected to someone. So they would go through, I'm on committee, they'd download my profile, or not download, but go to my profile on LinkedIn and say, there's 5 people here that you're connected to that we think would be a really great fit based on previous campaigns. Can you do an introduction? And that worked really well for them because, again, build your network throughout. I got involved because I had a coworker who had a special connection to LLS, and it was important to him to get involved, and he brought me in on his committee. And just as a committee member, I was inspired to become a candidate the next year. And we didn't win, but we definitely competed aggressively and had a great time. But we built this network where not only did they bring in new donors, but they brought in 5 or 6 new candidates over a 5 to 6 year span because we just kept expanding our network to get more people involved and compete.
Yeah.
So it's another way to think about it of who's connected to who that gets you to who you want to be involved.
Totally. Cool. And so last we have the communications plan. So these kind of come, I think, Alyssa, you would agree, in 2 parts. Like there's one for your organization and how you reach out to those champion fundraisers, and then there is the communications plan for the champion fundraisers to reach out to their networks.
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely 2 distinct paths and 2 distinct plans you'll need to have as you're communicating out there. So when you're reaching out to supporters, asking them to be fundraising champions, you need to be clear about your goals and their specific role in the campaign. What are they fundraising for? Why are they fundraising? How long is it? How much do they need to raise? What will this require of them? Be very specific so, again, that they know what they're trying to achieve with you at the organization. And then once you do have those fundraising champions, on board and they're ready to fundraise for you, set them up for success. Outline specific steps for them to set up their campaign. Provide that communication timeline, relevant images they can use on social media, and even draft suggested social copy, phone scripts, emails, really however you typically would fundraise for your organization. You want to think about all those communication channels and how you can provide suggested copy to your fundraising champions.
Yeah.
And the more guidance you can provide, the better. When you look at the opportunity you have to kick off a campaign, the more information, even to the extent of providing email templates, makes it a whole lot easier for that fundraiser, that champion fundraiser. I think at one point I was calling them fundraising champions, but we're getting close on the term there. So many of them out there. It's a great place to start. Of here's what we can provide you, of how to tell your story or insert your story here. Here's our mission. Here's where the money goes. All these different things just arms them with less work. They don't have to write out their own emails, and give them a chance to think outside of their own box of, I'm just going to send this to 1,000 people and move on. Maybe it triggers a communication that they hadn't thought of doing by giving them that model of what's worked and what could work.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, Brandon. This has been really helpful in terms of that, like, content and kind of learning the difference between peer-to-peer, crowdfunding. But so before we go, we just definitely want to pause for some questions. So feel free to write into the chat if you haven't already. This is great. We've had a few already come in. So let's just get in there and start answering them. Let's see. So sometimes our supporters do personal fundraisers on Facebook. Our problem is that we get no donor information, so we can thank donors and add them to our donor database. Any tricks to share and get that info?
So I think just quickly, when you're using technology to collect the donation, it is difficult with Facebook and these other third-party places. empowering your donors to guide them to your website, or having them track and provide the information as a follow-up, or even giving them the chance to say thank you. That's a start. It is hard to collect that. It is protected in some fashion, but that's my first suggestion. You probably have some tricks there too, right?
Yeah, I would second that. I work with a handful of organizations that they've faced this quite a bit, and when supporters come to them and say, oh, we really want to run a fundraising campaign, a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign for you through Facebook, they really try to guide them towards a different avenue of saying, that's great, we really appreciate it, but how about you use this other great tool that's going to help us even more? And so they guide them to a better fundraising tool so they can have access to that donor data and really can coach those fundraisers along the way, rather than kind of let them going rogue on those Facebook fundraisers.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I think, Brendan, I'll have you answer this one. What background and qualities are desirable for a fundraising champion? Any particular extent or level of prior giving, and how to spot those who are good at asking?
This is a great question. So I think it's a question everyone's trying to address these days. It's broken up with a few different questions here, but spotting those that are good at asking, oftentimes it's utilizing some of the research you're going to do in advance. Look for people who are in roles that are customer-facing type roles, real estate, people that own their own businesses, people that are more external in what they do, less so the people that are maybe, not to throw them under the bus, in the IT or accounting roles. They're not people that are asking for money already. It's going to be up the alley of people who are already in that type of profession. Spotting those that are good at asking also involves people that are passionate about their cause and aren't doing it all the time. So someone who's a fundraiser for another organization is probably not a great fit because their focus is on their fundraising. So really looking at people who are in those roles that are more social, spending time, they're networking already, they have a big network. Those are a few tips. In regards to level of giving, though, you'd be surprised. I was a $20 donor my first time with LLS, and it was just at an event. I didn't have a lot because I didn't know what to expect. And the next time I was involved, which was a year later, we raised a significant amount more. It's all about just getting people to find the reason to be involved and find that connection.
Yeah. Next question. I think, Alyssa, this will be a good one for you. If we set a minimum goal a fundraising champion has to make and they do not reach it, how do you get them to raise the rest of the minimum?
That is a great question, and I think people are 50-50 split on this one. Some of my clients, they require the fundraising champion to pay up to that amount if they want to participate in X event. And then if they don't, then they can't participate. On the other 50%, they just let it slide, and they say, well, sorry you couldn't raise it this year, please try again next year, but you can still participate. I think it really depends upon the cost of if this is part of a live event. I'm thinking of the skydiving client that I worked with. They weren't going to let anyone come up and skydive because there's a lot of costs surrounding that. So they needed to make sure everyone was fundraising that amount. But if you're just going to do a walk, it's probably not going to be as large of a cost. You have more people fundraising, so you can let some of that slide and have some more wiggle room there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think that makes sense too, kind of use your discretion, like you said, with the event. So another question additionally, so when dealing with champion fundraisers, is there any concern that their name will be one that people remember more than the organization?
I can answer really quick just in regards to my experience. If you prepare them with a communication plan that incorporates both their name and the mission and the organization, that shouldn't be a problem because they, again, are raising on behalf of. It's not like they're raising for their own foundation. So some of it comes with communication plans and guiding that. But I also think that's a great concern to address in advance of, we want you to tell people our story alongside of it and remind people why we are doing this and why we are trying to make this different.
Yeah.
And if you think back.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, if you think back to our best practices, one of the tools we said was, make sure your fundraising champion has a story, but make sure that they also have your organization story. So I think if you have those two paired together, should be no issue.
Yeah. Cool. So next question, it's a little long, so Alyssa, let me know if you need me to repeat it. But
right.
we do a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign for our annual walk run. What are tips on getting more involvement in this area? We've had the same team win they win the most funds raised for 4 years in a row, and we're looking for new ways to bring in new fundraisers and new teams.
They want someone new to win.
Ooh, some gamification here. So I would look at what is more important to you as an organization. Are you really looking for those dollars, or are you looking for those donors? You can have, because if you're bringing in brand new fundraising champions, yeah, they're probably not going to be the ones raising, $10,000 for your organization on their first fundraising campaign with you. But maybe they have a really large network and they can get a lot of people to donate $5. So really look at that data and see, are they bringing a lot of donors? Are they bringing a lot of dollars? And kind of trying to split it up that way. You can even have prizes for both, prizes for teams that bring in the most donors and prizes for teams that bring in the most dollars. You can also look at year-over-year growth. So if you want to then, again, focus on those newer teams or on teams that are, maybe in a year or two, their first year they raised 100, the next year they raised 500. That's a 500% growth if I'm doing my math in my head. But if I'm a really large team that I've been around a long time, if I raise 10,000, I move to 11,000, yeah, that's a lot of money, but that's not a large amount of growth. So just trying to look at donors, maybe year-over-year growth, and that's how you can get new people, perhaps winning those different prizes and going through there.
Okay, cool. Next question, so we have time for a few more. What are some strategies to consider for peer-to-peer fundraising that are not connected to an event?
I can list out, you're probably the expert on this. I'll let you take that one and maybe add on at the end there.
Yeah. If you're going to have a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign not associated with an event, that's great. What I would really recommend, though, is having something that you're fundraising for, something that's a bit more tangible. We had a great event, Sorry? No?
No, go ahead,
sorry. We had a campaign in town for a local theater, and they had some interns that needed to essentially buy a car so that they could get around to all the different events that the theater put on around town. And so their peer-to-peer fundraising campaign was to buy a car. And so all the interns were then very easily be able to have their own fundraising campaign, talk about why they love working and interning for the theater and why that this car is going to be so important to them as interns into the theater. So having something a bit more tangible and easy for someone to, again, wrap their head around, rally behind is a great way to have a successful peer-to-peer fundraising campaign without having that event component.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think this is a really great question that's just come in. We've never done a peer-to-peer campaign. We have a run, so if we connected the two, do we not charge for the run and instead ask for participants to do a fundraiser as a part of their entrance fee?
I have lots of thoughts on this. There's lots of different things that you can do. I have clients that, again, and this is what I would recommend, have that registration fee and make them fundraise. The registration fee covers the costs of the event. The amount that they're fundraising goes directly to your organization. And that's really where you're going to have the most financial success. If this is new for you, maybe having a smaller registration fee and having a smaller fundraising goal, making sure that you'll still come out even, at least even at the end of it. But I think you'll raise a lot more by adding on that peer-to-peer fundraising component in addition to having a smaller registration fee.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would suggest that as well, I think. Okay, next question is, any tips for integrating peer-to-peer fundraising into an event that has not historically featured it? I am not sure how willing our event sponsors or champions would be to add peer-to-peer before the event.
Sounds like this one coincides really well with the run walk question, but just touching on what Alyssa said is starting small. You don't have to do it all at once. You can slowly make the transition, add in these additional elements, and that'll make it easier for people to kind of adopt. It's the same concept when you're adding mobile fundraising to an event. It's the same concept when you're making a change that adjusts how people give. You don't want to rip the Band-Aid entirely off, but there are ways to bridge a gap, especially in this essence where it is something brand new to them.
Yeah.
Alyssa, would you agree?
100%. You don't want to throw too much at your supporters. So starting small and growing from that is a great place to start.
Cool. Next question. Earlier, you mentioned examples of champion fundraisers being board, employees, volunteers, etc. But I'm curious if you'd also include individuals that have benefited from the organization into that mix.
So an easy answer for me is the Man and Woman of the Year campaign coincides with the Boy and Girl of the Year campaign, which are usually a boy and a girl that are benefiting from the organization directly for LLS. It's got to be done in a tasteful way. I'll always say that on anything when it comes to using or incorporating constituents into your campaigns. But those people obviously have a story and often might be your biggest fundraisers. So incorporating those people into the campaign, if they're willing and able, is definitely something I would recommend just from experiencing it.
Okay, cool. Next question. Okay, sorry, lost our spot here. This one? Okay. Okay, please address more ways to have peer-to-peer fundraising with an event. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that, and then Alyssa, I'm sure you can build on. Really, adding peer-to-peer can be done with almost any event. It can be a bowling event. It can be just a raffle that you're running at a local bar. By incorporating the aspects that we already talked about, the Fundraising Champions, those people are ambassadors of your organization. So creating a competition or even just creating a campaign that is social driven, we all go back to the Ice Bucket Challenge that ALS did so many years ago. That that was a version of a peer-to-peer campaign that no one had done before. So taking your event that's been very successful and adding a component that has a peer-to-peer element to it, whether it's a competition or some other way for people to drive additional dollars raised, is really, it's a good fit for almost any type of event.
Yeah, cool. So next one is, do you ever let your fundraising champions come up with their own fundraising ideas, or do you more fit them into your organization's ideas?
Alyssa, I think I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. So you're kind of, at that point, you're kind of thinking of two very distinct types of peer-to-peer fundraising. We didn't really talk about DIY peer-to-peer fundraising, which is really like, it's my birthday and I want to fundraise for the SPCA. So I'm just going to go out and, DIY my own fundraiser for this organization. And then there's the secondary one is it's really organization centric, and they go out and recruit their fundraising champions for a specific reason. I think both can work. I would highly recommend you do an organization centric one where you can control the messaging, you can control who's fundraising, and you can really, again, have oversight into kind of everything that's going on as you're learning to do peer-to-peer fundraising with your supporters and as they're learning how to fundraise yourself. Again, you don't want a fundraising champion going out there and not having the right idea on how to talk about your organization, why they're fundraising for it, what your initiatives are. You want to make sure that messaging is on point. So starting with an organization-centric fundraising campaign is going to be your best bet. And then as you get really great at that and your supporters understand it, delving into that DIY peer-to-peer fundraising.
Yeah, cool. Last question here, and then we will wrap up. But how do you judge what type of award or reward to give to Fundraising Champions?
I mean, we got trophies, but it doesn't have to be. It really rewarding them and thanking them are almost the same concept. If these people are competing, there's definitely something at the end of the rainbow there for them, but it's more to the effect of thanking them and showing that appreciation, and then reminding everyone why they did this. You know, you could easily, go make up really cool trophies that have your logo and all these different things, and they're going to appreciate that. But really awarding them in a way that is tasteful, and then letting them know what difference they made. Because these are people who are mission oriented. They're not people who are making anything off of this. These are people who, in the end, are participating in your event and participating in your campaign and really supporting your organization. So it's hard to say what to give someone. I mean, people are all different, but that recognition and that thank you, I think, is, in my opinion, the thing that motivated me the most, because it made me remember 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it was, and asked all my friends to give money to a cause that they might not even been familiar with.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I guess, excuse me, Alyssa and Brandon, while you're both still here, or so Brandon, what would you say, like, overall, after everything that we talked about with peer-to-peer today, what would your one big takeaway be for everyone on the call?
So sitting on this, I mean, I've been through a campaign as a fundraising champion, and being involved in the committee, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is making sure you are ahead of the game when you're planning and having a communication plan. That made my life a whole lot easier, because I didn't know what I wanted to say in the email or what to say about LLF, especially. So having that communication plan, having those details on how to say things, and it was less work for me, because we all have something we do for a living, and then we're doing this on the side most often as a fundraising champion. So if you make their lives easier, they're going to appreciate that, and most likely they're going to perform better.
Yeah, great. And Alyssa, what would your one big takeaway be?
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway with peer-to-peer fundraising is just start simple. If you've never done something like this at your organization, it's going to be a new challenge for you and for your supporters. Your fundraising champions will need to learn to crawl before they walk before they run. They're not going to just hit the ground running and start raising thousands of dollars for you. They may have never been asked to fundraise before, so again, you need to make sure you're setting them up for success and getting them those great communication guides and things like that. And I think the most important thing is to have fun and really cheer them on. They're doing a great thing for your organization. Show them that you appreciate them and that you're with them every step of the way.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, fabulous. Thank you so much to Alyssa and Brandon for joining us today. And if we didn't get to your questions, we'll be rounding up the rest of them, and we will send out, we'll put them together in a blog post and send that out to everyone, so that you do have the answer to those. And our next webinar is going to be on February 20th for marketing and promoting your fundraising campaign. So we hope to see you guys then, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.